Alrighty, boys and girls, time for another video. This is Chapter 6, Section 3, Solve Equations with Rational Coefficients. Now, just to remind you, remember rational numbers are numbers that can be expressed as a fraction, so we're going to be dealing with decimals and fractions as coefficients today. So, let's take a look. First of all, like I said, we're going to have decimal and fraction coefficients as the two types we look at. Let's start out with decimal. So, when you have a decimal coefficient, you're just going to divide each side by that coefficient, just like the problems we were working on. Let's get an example up here. 16 equals 0.25 multiplied by x. Now here, the coefficient is a decimal, and the coefficient is 0.25. That's the coefficient of the variable x. Now remember, the coefficient is being multiplied by the variable, and the opposite of multiplication is division. So we're going to divide both sides by the coefficient 0.25. Watch. Remember, a fraction bar represents division, so here I've just written down divide by 0.25 on both sides. On the right-hand side, times 0.25 divided by 0.25 cancels, leaving x on the right-hand side, and on the left-hand side, 16 divided by 0.25 is 64. Next, we're going to talk about the second rational coefficient form, fractions. Now before we get into this, we have to remember two things. One, how we divide by a fraction. Now remember, if we have a problem like this example, 1/3 divided by 2/5, what we're going to do is we're going to rewrite this as a multiplication problem. So use KCF, or keep, change, flip, as so, and now we have 1/3 times 5/2. Multiplying straight across gives 5/6. The reason why this is important is because we're still going to divide by the coefficient when we have fractional coefficients, but remember, when we divide by a fraction, we really multiply by the reciprocal. Now, speaking of reciprocals, the other important property we have to remember is this. When we multiply a fraction by its reciprocal, we end up with the same number on top and bottom. Take a look at what happens when we multiply this one. And as we know, when you have the same number on top and bottom, it equals 1 whole. This is why we can cancel out the fractions on one side of the equation, leaving the variable isolated. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at what to do with fractional coefficients. If the coefficient is a fraction, you're just going to multiply both sides by the reciprocal of the coefficient. Now, again, like I said before, the truth is we're dividing by the coefficient, just like always, but when you divide by a fraction, you're actually multiplying by the reciprocal, just like I showed you before here. Instead of dividing by 2/5 here, I multiply by the reciprocal. Let's take a look at an example. Here we have 3/4 multiplied by x equals 12/20. The coefficient of the variable x is 3/4. So what we're going to do is divide by that, and the way we do that is by multiplying both sides by the reciprocal of the coefficient. So I simply fill this in with times 4/3 on both sides, and on the left-hand side, 4/3 times 3/4 is going to cancel out because I end up with 12/12, which is 1. That leaves me with x on the left-hand side, and on the right, on top I have 12 times 4, which is 48, and for the denominator I have 20 times 3, which is 60. This fraction we can reduce, of course. Both of these numbers are divisible by 12, so this reduces to 4/5. And that's how we deal with fractional coefficients. Okay? Best of luck with these. Also, if you want more practice problems, be sure to check out the next video.